Hey everybody! I'm out here in the beautiful outdoors in my backyard. Here's the view. It's just an absolutely gorgeous day. So happy Memorial Day to everybody. I wanted to read a fun excerpt from my 6th novel, Tairseach, and it is a Christian historical fiction book, and it was published just a few months ago, and it's like jam-packed with mystery and adventure and romance, and I'm gonna read like a really exciting part. And this book has been, I've been told that it's one of the best ones so far, and it was actually the hardest book to write. I almost quit writing because of it, but with a lot of prayer and just determination, it was finally published. It took 2 years to publish. And Tairseach is actually a Gaelic word for portal. And to explain like the book to certain people, I just say, well, it's like Chronicles of Narnia meets Pride and Prejudice. And it just has different aspects from it. So I'm going to read from chapter 41 and enjoy. Oh, and I should say, it's all in like English, Irish accents, and I don't do the accents when I read, sorry, but it'll still be fun. Kelton! Meg shrieked and ran to his side where he was unhitching the horse from the wagon. I hear someone coming! Kelton quickly glanced behind them as 4 men on horseback came riding through the fog. Meg's heart plummeted into her stomach, for one of the men was Richard. Kelton hurriedly went back to loosening the leather strap, but it was no use. There wasn't time to free the horse from the wagon. Run! He frantically met Meg's stare. Then they bolted into the fog. There you are, Richard shouted when the wagon came into view. Brett and 2 other men quickly dismounted. When they reached the wooded area, they ran into it quickly went after them. Did we lose them? Meg looked behind her for only a second. When she returned her gaze ahead to continue to follow Kelton, she gasped. He wasn't there. He disappeared into the fog. Other than the trees, all was white. Kelton, where are you? Meg called out, but not overly loud. Taking a few steps forward, Meg strained to see. At that moment, the figure of a man appeared through the mist. There you are, she sighed with a great relief. As she drew near and looked upon his face, it wasn't Kelton at all, but one of the men with Richard. Kelton! She screamed and immediately cowered back, only to hit her back against a tree directly behind her. Got you, the older man smiled, revealing horribly rotten teeth and a wad of tobacco in his cheek. Meg grimaced from the stench when he stepped up to her and held her up against the tree. My, you're a pretty little thing, he spewed in her face. Sweat rolled down the side of his unshorn face as he turned to spit on the ground next to where she stood. Meg looked away, anywhere but up at him. Get your hands off her! Kelton came out of nowhere and took hold of the man's coat, pulling him backwards away from Meg. He threw him to the ground, then tackled him. The 2 men struggled with grunts and pounding of punches. After getting a better look, Meg realized she had seen the horrible man once before. He was one of the peculiar blokes she had seen talking to Richard in the gardens when she snuck out to overhear their conversation. Even then, Meg thought they looked strange compared to Richard's normal business associates. Hearing the loud blow to Kelton's face made her wince. When it looked like he was winning, a second man came running. Kelton, look out! Meg cried. He was no match for the 2 against him. Kelton was lifted off of the first man on the ground from behind and his arms pinned back by the second man. Now you're gonna get it. The first got up and let Kelton have it. His head whipped back by the blow. The men threw his fist into his stomach next, causing his body to arch backwards. Meg helplessly watched him fall to the ground and the man kick him in the stomach over and over. Covering her ears, she couldn't bear hearing him gasp and grunt in pain. Marguerite! Meg turned to see Brett. He very slowly walked toward her, but stopped when it looked like she would bolt. Wait, don't go. I want to speak to you. Why are you so frightened of me? What have I done? I've only ever loved you and treated you with respect." His calming tone over the nearby fighting and earnest expression befuddled her. She felt the urge to run, yet his caring gaze pinned her there. Was she wrong to fear him? Was the strange flashback earlier true, or had she thought it in vain? And what had he done? What had he done to make her afraid? Brett inched his way toward her once again. Meg glanced at Kelton when he conjured up a second wind and shot to his feet and plowed into the older man in front of him, sending them both flying to the ground. He pummeled him in the face, one after another, in rage. "I do love you. I beg of you to tell me what I've done to make you tremble so." Glancing back to Brett, Meg saw he was almost within reach. She took in his longing, heartfelt eyes, trying to process what he was saying. Brett carefully reached out and touched her hand. When he did, a small yet noticeable crazed look flashed across his face. "Be careful who you think you can trust." The well-known warning returned to her. "No," she breathed, and pulled her hand away from his. Meg backed away and watched Brett reach for something behind his back. Time seemed to slow when her eyes beheld a pistol in his hand. "Meg, run!" Kelton shouted. It sounded distant to her, like an echo on the wind. Brett held up the gun with shaking hand and pointed it directly at her. Meg was frozen. She heard the click as he pulled back the hammer. Try as she might to seek cover, her body wouldn't move. All she could do was stare at her fiancé. That is, until she felt someone take hold of her hand. Kelton pulled her to the right and into the woods. Gunfire. Don't mind our stray cat right here. She's just meowing for attention. She's coming to hear the reading. That is, until she felt someone take hold of her hand. Kelton pulled her to the right and into the woods. Gunfire suddenly thundered through the sky. To his horror, he felt Meg's hand touch his. "Go away, kitty!" He looked over as she fell to the ground. "Meg, no!" he cried hoarsely. "I'm all right," she breathed, and grasped for his other hand for assistance. Kelton, nearly overcome with relief, realized she only tripped. Brett had missed his target. Quickly helping Meg to her feet, they were off. Meg's heart felt as if it would beat out of her chest, especially after hearing the pistol go off. They were both astounded that the men had guns at all. This was no mere game to them, but a threat to their very lives. Why am I so important to them? Why do they seek my life? Kelton helped her as they ran as fast as their feet would carry them. With his adrenaline, pain began to blur his vision. For the first time, he felt warm blood on the side of his head, rolling down his face. Each time he exhaled, his stomach and ribs pounded. But they couldn't stop now. They had to get to safety. Meg wanted to look back to see how close they were being followed, but knew it would only slow them down. Instead, she looked ahead, willing her feet to go faster. There was a clearing up ahead. The footsteps behind them seemed to grow distant. Were they actually making some headway? "Stop!" Kelton bellowed and pulled her to a stop. There, only 3 feet in front of them, was a huge drop-off. They very nearly ran right over the cliff. "How could I be so daft? Now we're trapped," Kelton panicked, trying to think through his discomfort. They slowly peered over the side of the jagged coastline. It was well over 100-foot drop, with sharp rocks right before the freezing waves that crashed against the shore. The salty wind from off the coast caused the fog to drift away further inland. Blue skies peeked through the clouds. Kelton quickly searched on either side of them, but there was nowhere to go. "Stop right there," Richard yelled. Kelton and Meg had no choice but to turn and face them. It was over. Richard got off his steed and pointed his pistol at them, as did Brett. Meg's eyes instantly met his. Only moments ago he tried to kill her. "You have nowhere to go. Enough of this. Surrender yourselves to us and you will live," Richard declared. "What do you want with me? I've never done anything to you." Boldness rose up in Meg. Richard didn't reply, but smiled wickedly. "Go get them," he ordered his men, and they obeyed. Just then, Meg looked up, for a tawny owl flew over them and along the coast. Hope washed over her the moment its call echoed. The two men were fast approaching. "Do you trust me?" Meg whispered. "What?" Kelton asked, never removing his eyes from the men. Meg turned around to the cliff and gazed over the vastness. The heavy breeze took her breath away. The owl called again. "Do you trust me?" Meg was more sure than anything what they must do. "Yes," was all he said as he desperately tried to think of a way of escape. They had to do something. How could he lead them to a cliff? It was all his fault. All of his unsettled doubt ceased when Meg took his hand and turned him to the cliff. Stepping up to the very edge, Kelton glanced down at her hand, holding his, then up at her. When their eyes met, she was smiling ever so slightly. It was the very last thing he thought she would be doing at a drastic time such as this. All at once, he finally saw what she planned to do. "Wait, what?" he blurted. Surely she didn't mean for them to... "Trust me." Meg tightened her hold. Taking a deep breath, they jumped. Meg's eyes were fixed on the sea below, coming at them at a fierce rate as wind whipped past them loudly. Over the loud whoosh, Meg heard the noise of the tawny owl when time stood still. The ocean disappeared. In an instant, it was as if she was watching a dream unfold. Well, to hear more, you're going to have to get your own copy. I know I left you hanging, but, that's on purpose. So, if you want your copy, you can go to barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com or my website, kellyallnovels.com. And it's a super cheap book, and it's just a really exciting. And here's the good part is it's my publishing company is called Pure Books. You can see that right there. And it means that it's appropriate for all ages to read, because when I was growing up, I'd read Christian historical novels, and I would just get so annoyed because there would be stuff in there I'd read, and I'd be like, wait a second, I don't want to read this. Because books don't have ratings. I think they should have ratings like movies do. But anyway, so I wanted to write a book that would be filled with adventure and romance and just a great story, but without all the junk that's out there today. And so any age would like it. And so thank you for joining me for this fun book review and excerpt, and have a great day.